What's up, everybody, and welcome to my inaugural weekly Magic the Gathering Arena breakdown. If you caught my video earlier this week, on Mondays, I will be releasing videos covering the previous weekend's tournament results and what decks folks are playing in tournaments. But on Fridays, what we're going to be doing is covering the sort of the week in review in Magic the Gathering Arena. So for all of you grinders out there, for all of you folks trying to break out of bronze or gold or platinum, maybe looking mythic in the eyes and seeing what you might be able to do, hopefully this video will give you some idea of what decks people are playing, what decks are doing well, and maybe give you some ideas of new decks to play, because there is a constantly shifting meta. Even over the last couple weeks, we've seen new decks be introduced that are actually doing pretty well, and I'm even seeing people taking those to IRL tournaments based off of how they're doing in Arena. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it. We're actually going to leverage a tool called Untapped.gg. If you've caught any of my Bronze to Mythic videos, you know I use this tool to kind of track what I've been up to in Limited. But what this tool was actually known for prior to Limited, so Limited's a new feature, was all of its constructed data. So what we have here, we have a couple things that we're going to look at. Just give you a lay of the land. We are over in constructed. We're taking a look at the current meta. And unfortunately, we can't adjust the date for sort of the overall meta information. However, we can adjust the rank bracket. So I'm going to start with bronze to gold because, you know, some folks are struggling to, newer players might be struggling to get up into even gold. And then we will take a look at platinum to mythic. So platinum tends to be where the water is the most murkiest. So a lot of folks can get stuck in platinum and then have a hard time getting out of platinum and then into the higher ranks. And that namely has to do with win rate. So once you get into platinum, every win is a pip and every loss is a pip loss. So you do have to have a positive win rate to get out of platinum into diamond and then into mythic. So we'll take a look at the two brackets. And one of the things that you're greeted with when you first look at this page is the win rate today and popularity today. We're also seeing some of what's going on in the mythic world. So you can get a list of like, hey, what are mythic players playing? So you can see the number 20, you can see the number 9, number 6, number 4 players. So you can see what folks are playing as well and sort of the win rates that they have with these. Another really good piece of information is found here, popularity over time. And I should mention at this point, I'm completely unsponsored by Untapped. I'm just a numbers nerd and I really like the numbers. And we'll use some of this information to see how decks are actually performing over the time. We do have a date line. You see this January 1st. So this will give us sort of the last 3 days of how things are performing. And it does reset. So you can see a lot of these lines have like dropped down, have a pretty flat win rate. But some of them are skyrocketing. So if we, for instance, look at Demir mid-range, super popular until like November, and then it kind of drops off and we see an increase. So if I just turn off all of these other ones, and then now we can look just at Demir mid-range, and we can see over in December, it got really popular again. And then there hasn't been much change, obviously, in January. But some of these will change drastically. So I know some of you are like, well, hey, it's a flat bar. There's not a lot of data yet. We don't know what's going on. That's true. All of that's true. That's how numbers work. So you can look at sort of the last month prior and see, okay, it kind of did fall off in win rate near the end. It had a peak in December of about 62. So near end of December. So we'll consider that part of our week. But if we take a look at some of the others, we can see like how did Gruul Prowess do? So Gruul Prowess has been doing really well. So that's our Gruul Aggro, Gruul Prowess decks. We're seeing a lot or a huge increase in win rates with those. We were seeing peaks over here at like the 60.9. We're hearing popularity over time. So it's getting a lot of popularity because people are seeing it do well. Another one we'll take a look at is the Golgari mid-range. We're seeing a massive increase in that win rate. If we look at that bottom chart here, And then obviously there's the reset in January, so we'll kind of ignore that number. But there's something that's really interesting to me is near the end of December, just a massive increase in the Golgari mid-range. We'll see here 4-color domains kind of been flat. Boros Burn been pretty flat. Mono White, we've seen actually a small decrease coming in January, but it's been pretty flat. And then Simic Beanstalk, though. This one has been interesting. So we have that same sort of thing going on, just a massive uptick in win rate at the end of December. So again, we're going to consider that part of this week. Simic Beanstalk has been performing really interestingly. And then we have the Mono Red Aggro, which has just been doing well. We have a nice, just like high win rate. Even though it's pretty static, it's just a nice high win rate, which is just telling you how well this deck is doing. Now, this one has been interesting. So Jeskai Convoke, we're seeing a massive uptick. So like I said, we're seeing, so we in this case is, I'm also a ladder grinder. So playing a lot of ladder manchas, trying to get myself out of platinum. I got to Mythic last month, so I got reset to Plat 4 and running into, you know, the murky waters of platinum right now, just kind of going up a little bit, going down, going up a little bit, going down. So we're stuck in there right now, but seeing a lot more Jeskai Convoke. Jeskai Convoke is actually a deck that I'm interested in building, but I've been waiting to get the number of uncommon wild cards to actually be able to craft this deck. So Jeskai Convoke, though, we see this in January. One of the few that's just have this massive uptick in the last 3 days in win rate. And so it's not quite over 60%, but we're seeing a lot of like interesting results on Jeskai Convoke. Gruul Aggro is another one. It's interesting that we're not getting data past foundations. It might be because of how it's laid out, and I think it all kind of fell into Gruul Prowess. But Gruul Delirium is one that we're seeing played quite a bit. So Gruul Aggro, I think, just got consumed by Gruul Prowess is what happened here. We also are seeing pretty flat results from Mono Black Demons, Azurius Oculus. This one's kind of fallen off because of all of the graveyard hate. Gruul Delirium, we're running into it from time to time. I think it just gets outclassed by some of the decks. It does perform well. You can see it has over a 50% win rate, which is what you need. But it is not in the 60s like some of the higher performing decks. Azurius Tempo, Azurius Enchantments. We're seeing sort of an interesting increase there. We're not seeing the Pixie deck. I think Azurius Enchantments might be kind of falling in a little bit to that Pixie deck. And so those are some overall trends that are going on with these decks. One of the other things I really wanted to take a look at was the tier list. As another great place to look, we are also, I should point out, we are doing best of 3. I'm not doing best of 1. If you're trying to climb the ladders, your best bet to climb the ladders is always going to be best of 3, unless you just want to spam best of 1 like mono red aggro decks, and that's your jam, and you don't want to worry about sideboards. But you can significantly improve your win rate if you play best of 3, because now you have sideboard strategies. You can bring the cards in to counter the deck that you're playing. A lot of decks become a lot better against their matchups when they sideboard. So in my opinion, you can improve your win rate by moving to best of 3. If you're just want to spam single games, there's some gimmicky decks out there that can help you get some like, I'm not saying that there's not a way to climb with best of 1, but I feel like for those that want to have more of a competitive mindset, want to really truly improve their win rate, best of 3 is the way to go. So all that to be said, that's what we're looking at here. I do like looking at these. So for instance, we were talking about Jeskai Convoke. We can see win rate today, 58.7 for Jeskai Convoke. You can actually click into this and see, let's reduce it to like 100 matches, 50 matches. There we go. Here's a Jeskai Convoke that has over 50 matches at 56.6% win rate. And you can actually see what cards are going in here. You can see I'm missing a lot of these cards. Actually, for this version, I apparently am not missing as many as I thought I was. Another version I was looking at, I was missing like 16 uncommons. So you can actually see what deck is being played. But the next thing I really want to go to is the tier list. And now the tier list, we can get more granular. So I can look at the last 7 days. We can look at best of 3. And we're still in that bronze to gold. And we can see what decks are doing well. So the mono red aggro is still taking the lead. In Arena, It's all about speed. It's all about those games. We see 580 matches played. The next one is Dimir midrange, 58.9. So we've talked about Dimir midrange. So we'll look at an example deck of Dimir midrange here. So this is running 3 Kaitos, 4 Spyglass, 4 Fairy Mastermind, 4 Flood Pits, 2 Tishanas, 4 Enduring, 1 Shieldred. Then we got 3 Cut Downs, 2 Spell Stutters, 2 Annoyance, 3 Go for the Throats, Fabloom. So this is more like the Dimir Fairy deck. Puts more fairies on the board, so it makes Spell Stutter a lot stronger. Running a Nowhere to Run, you got your standard mana base, and then in the sideboard, another Cut Downs, 2 Negates, 2 Duress, another Shieldred, a Gix's Command, an Anoint with Affliction, a Blot Out, a Malicious Eclipse, 3 Preacher of the Schisms, and 2 3 Steps Ahead. So this is a fairly standard Dimir deck. This is, in a lot of people's opinion, considered one of the best decks, if not the best deck in the format. However, Dimir has one of the highest skill ceilings in standard right now. So what do I mean by skill ceiling? So the deck is really reliant on the pilot and the sideboard strategy. And if you can get really, really good at that, the capabilities of the deck is much greater than a lot of the other decks in the format. Namely, mono red, everybody's like, well, hey, mono red has the best win rate. Sure, it has the best win rate because it does have a lower skill ceiling than something like Dimir midrange. But what so what that means is to pilot that deck to the best of the deck's ability requires less skill than to pilot Dimir midrange. So a lot more people are able to pilot the red aggro deck at its highest capabilities. And at its highest capabilities, as we saw, it is one of the top performing decks. So it still has a super solid win rate, but there's just because there's more people that can pilot that deck at its greatest capability. Now with Dimir midrange, there's a lot of people playing the deck, but not a lot of people are able to pilot it at its greatest capability, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So this deck, if everybody was able to pilot Dimir midrange at its greatest potential, we would see a much higher win rate out of it. But since it requires such a high skill ceiling to perform, to pilot this deck at its greatest capability, it's a bit of a struggle, right? So that's why we see it kind of in second place at a 58.9% win rate. It could be much higher if everybody was at a much greater skill level. So keeping that in mind, Dimir midrange is still considered one of the best, even though we're seeing almost 5 percentage points less than mono red aggro. It's just because there's so many more people that are able to pilot that mono red aggro at its greatest capabilities. And because we see a lot of matches, so we have a ton of people that know, hey, this is the best deck in the meta, because you could use another website like mtgdex.net. If we go here and we go to standard and you look at like the meta, Dimir midrange is the super high meta at 17.09. And you see the same thing. A lot of people use MTG Goldfish. If we go here, go to Dex, popular meta, we're in standard. Dimir midrange, 21.6% of the meta. So that's why when we look at this data, we see so many more matches being played. With the next closest and sort of like mono red is over here in like mono red prowess. So less matches being played at 5,800, but it's a higher win rate, and this is how it's sorted, is by win rate. So keeping all of that in mind, Dimir is considered one of the strongest. And again, we're only looking at the last week. So we also have Gruul Prowess in here. Gruul Prowess is your pretty standard Gruul deck with your Questing Druid. So it's got your Mouse base, it's got some Monastery Swift Spears in there, your Screaming Nemesis, but then Questing Druid, running a Snakeskin Veil, a couple Innkeeper's Talents, and then really strong sideboard strategy against those enchantment decks, running Paw Patch Formation. We also have some good targets for like that 5 damage. So you hit your Shieldrids, you hit most of the Overlords except for the White Overlord. So the White Overlord is always an issue to deal with. So that's when Paw Patch formation comes in because, destroy target enchantment. So all that to be said, has a good sideboard strategy. It's also a bit more grindy because of Questing Druid, so you can draw cards. And then next up is the Mono Black Demons, which has been interesting that we're seeing that moving up the charts. Mono Black running Liliana, your Deep Cavern Bat, your Preacher of the Schism, your Archfiend Dross, your Shieldrids, some Duress. Then you have a really good removal package of Cut Downs, Anoints, Go for the Throats, Shieldred's Edict, and Shoot the Sheriff. Running also Maze Mine Tomb, just a kind of a one-off. And then, of course, Annex for more card draw. Really simple land base. You're running some Fountain Ports for some more card draw, some more value. But Soulstone Sanctuary is a demon. So keep that in mind because it's every creature type. It's a demon, so it can oftentimes help with Annex. Obviously Swamps, and then Sunken Citadel. This also helps with Fountain Port. So over in the sideboard, just more of the same. Cut downs, more Shieldrids. We've got Dreams of Steel and Oil, Gix's Command for those board wipes, some more Anoints. The Filigree Silex. So this is an interesting one. Put a counter on Filigree Silex, sacrifice the Filigree Silex, destroy, or Silex maybe, destroy each non-land permanent with mana value equal to the number of oil counters on Filigree Silex. Remove 10 oil counters from among permanents you control and sacrifice the Filigree Silex. It deals 10 damage to any target. Really interesting sideboard. Some blot outs at the end, a Withering Torment, and some Ghost Vacuum for that graveyard hate. So all that to be said, we're seeing that uptick. Of course, we're seeing our Overlords deck. This is the green, white, blue Overlords. There's also, I've seen the green, white, red Overlords as a popular approach because of the boiler, because that red Overlord is pretty spicy. This also runs a 1 of Atraxa, if you can get this out. They're not doing anything in the mana base to be, actually this one might, white, blue, green, and black. This one's are actually running some black. I've seen ones that don't actually run any black sources in their sideboard, except for maybe like Cavernous Souls. And they're getting the black from mostly the Overlords of the Hauntwoods to be able to hard cast the Atraxa. So there's some really interesting ways to get Atraxa out. But all that to be said, this is pretty standard. Oh, God, I hate this card. I have literally purposely sideboarded into like my Boros aggro and my Gruul aggro cards to deal with herd migration. Because it's just so scary. Plus, whatever deals with herd migration is going to also deal with any go wide board. So like Slagstorm, Split Up in the Boros, Temporary Lockdown, to name Brotherhood's End, to name a few that can kind of deal with this herd migration as well as sort of a go wide board strategy. But then solid removals, running your Elspeth, running your Get Lost, running your Scroll Shift. You see this one is also running Day of Judgment in addition to a couple Sunfalls, a Split Up. So really interesting board wipe split, giving them some options. Over here, they're running Up the Beanstalks and Leyline Bindings, which are oftentimes casting for 1 white, which is just super annoying. And then it obviously synergizes off Up the Beanstalk. So like once this gets going, this deck is so hard to deal with. Honestly, it's so hard to deal with once it gets going. A really strong sideboard strategy again. Rest in Peace is going to blow up any graveyard synergies. Authority of Councils for the red aggro deck. Temporary Lockdown. It's going to hit almost everything in the red aggro deck as well as any token generation decks. Jace the Perfected Mind, which is an interesting sideboard choice. So they might be going for the mill strategy here, but that's interesting sideboards. But you oftentimes see Nissa in this one. You also see Elspeth Smite. Oh, that's probably because they're running Doppelgang. So running Doppelgang is just absolutely nasty because you're making so much mana. Being able to copy token or copy permanents is just crazy. So you could come in, make a bunch of copies of like overlords and crazy stuff like that, running some bases in the sideboard and another split up. So that will cover sort of the A and B tier decks. We do see Jeskai Convoke. Like I said, it's interesting. It's interesting. Has a decent win rate if you can get it to go. But if you're looking for some decks and you are in bronze to gold, these are probably the ones you want to look at. Look at your A's and look at your B's. So now, you should probably do what the backdrop says. Leave a comment too. Be much appreciated. Let's carry on. What I want to do is I want to go ahead, go back to the meta, and let's change this from, we're going to change this from gold or platinum to mythic. So I'm going to apply this filter, and we're going to see some interesting changes already. We see mono red aggro falling down the charts in today's win rate. We're seeing white, mono white control and Jeskai Convoke moving up. So for all of those in platinum, this is where things get really interesting. This is now we're seeing just a quick shift in the ranks is going to show you like, hey, this whole meta gets shifted up again. So if you're stuck in the lower ranks and you really want to go up, probably mono red aggro is going to help you get out of there. But then once you get into platinum, now you really got to start to think, okay, how do I play against the meta? What is going on? What decks are really good? And I agree, mono white control is a big pain in the ass. Like, it's a pain in the ass to play against. Convoke is a pain in the ass to play against. We still see mono red aggro up here with mono white control just a little bit ahead. But now the margins start to compress, the win rates start to compress, and it really starts coming down to the pilot, right? The deck can't do all the work. We also see Dimir mid-range. So if I come back here and I go bronze to gold, apply filter, Dimir range is at 14.9. We see that mono red. Now, if I go back here and do this, 15.2. So it's going to go up. Domain's going to go up. Gruul Prowess is going to go up. Mono red goes down, right? So all of that to kind of pay attention to. We can also see how these decks are performing over time. We can see an increase. Like most of these decks are all going to be above 50%, right? So we're looking at that bottom chart. The red line is 50%, or the red area is below 50%. So all these decks are performing really well. We got Gruul Prowess still above 57.5%. Golgari, it's kind of dipping down. So Golgari is actually in your platinum to mythic range under 50% in a lot of cases. So most folks are not too scared of Golgari in the higher ranks. We see mono red aggro still performing respectively. Respectively. There we go. Boros Burn, we're actually seeing that come up above 50%, but it's still pretty low. Mono white control though, this one is where things are getting a little interesting. We also see the Simic Beanstalk. We do see an upward trend before January, and then it kind of resets. But we'll see if that comes back out of the red here. Same thing with Gruul Delirium. Like I said, I was a little surprised by how Gruul Delirium was doing, but that was in the bronze to gold. In bronze to mythic, in platinum to mythic, we are seeing a little bit better win rate with that Gruul Delirium because I was seeing a lot of those. Azorius Artifacts also on the high or on the increase. We're seeing Azorius Oculus. So this is that graveyard recursion deck. So it is doing pretty well. We saw a massive upward tick in that deck, over 57.5%. Jeskai Convoke doing well. Temur Prowess was in the red, but it's coming back out. Azorius Tempo, this was the older version. We got Rakdos Sacrifice, Orzhov Bats is all over. All right, we're getting into some kind of like weird decks that don't matter too much. So now I want to go ahead, take a look at the tier list and see how things have changed. So what we see is a difference in mono white tokens has moved most commonly to to Selesnya counters. So Selesnya counters is essentially the tokens, but it has a little bit more of a mechanic in it where it's piling on tokens onto decks, and we're seeing some really interesting uptick in win rates, 58.5%. But we also got to keep in mind the matches played. So it is a lower number of matches played, and we are looking again at the last week. Mono red aggro is still at the top. Nothing's really changed in this. It's just like a 4-4-4-4-4 of you got all the mice. So you got Heartfire Hero, you got the Ember Heart Challenger, you have the Manifold Mouse, and then you're running the Hired Claw, the Monastery Swift Spear, and the Screaming Nemesis over in your instances. Burst Lightning, Monstrous Rage, Lightning, and then Windstalker Frenzy. I like having the 5 damage in the main board. Feels good. Then you're running 21 lands, 17 mountains, 4 Rockface Village. And then in the sideboard, real simple strategy. You got Urabrasks, you got Lithomatic, you got Torch the Tower, you got Twisted Fealty, and Sunspine Links. So all that to be said, pretty solid deck. Still at the top, right? Grinders are going to be grinding, and they're going to be playing mono red aggro. Selesnya Tokens is a super, super good deck that is doing really well in the higher ranks. And it just kind of scales away, makes it really hard for aggro to deal with, can oftentimes counter a lot of the big cards you're finding in Dimir, gets value over Dimir with some good removal, like Soul Partition. We're running the Shelter by Ghosts. In the sideboard, you got more Shelter by Ghosts. You got Paw Patch Formation. We have Elspeth's. We have Rest in Peace. Like, there's just a good control aspect to this deck as well. So this is another one I want to test out. We also see the mono white control version, right? This one is doing really well just because it does what it says. It controls the board and then just puts down some good value creatures with, like, in Planeswalkers like Archangel Elspeth. You got your Cathar Commando, which is a 3/1, but also control. Destroys artifacts or enchantments. Bays of Bounding. We have Lay Down Arms for removal. Sunder the Gateway. Destroy target non-token artifact or enchantment an opponent controls. Incubate 2. Create an Incubator token with 2 1/1 counters on it. And then you have Incubate 2, then transform an Incubator token you control. So pretty cool little card. Then we have Season of Burrow, more control. You can either create rabbits, exile target non-land permanents, owner controller draws a card, and then return target permanent card with mana value 3 or less from the graveyard to the battlefield with indestructible counter on it. So 3 or less is going to hit your Cathar as well. So target permanent card really only hits Cathar, and then you have enchantments that it could hit, like somebody destroys your temporary lockdown or your caretakers, it can go retrieve those, or an Authority of Council can go retrieve those. Then we obviously have Sunfall. You always got to put that in the white deck. Elspeth, you have Get Lost, you have Carrot Cake, Authority of Councils for the red aggro decks, Caretakers. It's going to trigger off all those tokens, get you a bunch of card draw. Then we have Lockdown, and then Virtue of Loyalty. This is fun. So it runs an Elegant Parlor to be able to cast the Urabrask's Forge. Also running Stonebrain. Stonebrain's fun. Like, I don't think we see it enough. Can completely shut down some strategies. Like some of the lower, if you're going up against a domain deck, just like shut down Zur. Like, Zur's done. Zur can't do anything. You could shut down an Overlord if the Overlord is really pissing you off, right? Just get rid of the Overlords. So really, really interesting sort of approach with the mono white control. Like I said, we saw Gruul Delirium doing really well. So Gruul Delirium is pretty fun. It's running Ren and Realmbreaker. It's running C-Note Scout. It's running Patchwork Beastie, Fear of Missing Out, Keen-Eyed Curator, the freaking Wildfire Wickerfolk. They get this down on 2, and they're just swinging. If they have like a Patchwork Beastie on 1, pitching things into their graveyard. I've seen this come down on like 2 or 3 sometimes with the Delirium already activated, because you kill. So say artifact creature comes down, or this comes down as an artifact creature, and then somebody kills it. It goes into the graveyard, and then you throw down like an instant or a sorcery or something, or there's some other ways, like breakout, for instance. Maybe not quite on turn 2, but this coming down as a 3/2 on turn 2 with haste is crazy. So it's wrecked me. All I'm saying is I got a little bit of PSD or PTSD. Wow, PSD. I don't know what PSD is. PTSD from Wildfire Wickerfolk, just getting in there, doing a bunch of damage. Running breakouts, pitching cards, and also going to find stuff. You got Torch the Tower, you got Violent Urge, some Snakeskin Veil, Scorching Dragonfire. Mana base, pretty solid for what you would see for Gruul. You got your forest, you're running Copperline Gorge, Carplusian Forest, some Restless Ridgeline, and Thornspire Verge. Over on the sideboard, Pyroclasm for that board wipe, some Burst Lightning, some more Snakeskin Veils, Obliterating Bolt, some Torch the Towers, Pick Your Poison, Paw Patch again for that enchantment hate. This is fun, some artifact hate, as well as some anti-counter spells, as well as maybe like like just damage spells, so you can redirect. So say somebody tries to burst lightning you could then just burst lightning one of their creatures. It's fun. Also, you can just get rid of 2 blockers and get some additional damage in. And then a Vengeful Possession for just a little extra damage. Steal something big of theirs. Like maybe they have an Archfiend Dross up there. Just steal it. Swing in for 6 damage. So all that to be said, don't sleep on Gruul Delirium. We are seeing it. Of course, Domain, we covered that. You got that Zur in there running the blue, green, and white. Running the 1 Atraxa. We talked about it. This version has 1 Swamp. And then they're running Underground Mortuary. And then, yeah, you can do this. Is this an avatar? It's an angel. So it's a Phyrexian angel. So you would have to specifically name this if you wanted to hardcast it. Like Phyrexian angel. Or Phyrexian or angel, and you get to choose. But we've seen this deck. This deck is doing pretty well. 59.9 in this particular version with 160 matches. So we can actually like go in... you can see some of these are a little bit lower right now. Gruul Prowess. This is we've seen this deck again. Pretty standard package. You got your mice. You got your Monastery Swiftspear. Your Questing Druids. This is the same deck that we've seen before. And then Boros Mice. This is particularly one that I've been playing. I even own in paper. So I actually own in paper Gruul Prowess and Boros Mice. I have the land base for Gruul Delirium in some of these cards. I should probably look at like Gruul Delirium as well. But Boros Mice has been a ton of fun. It's a card, or it's a deck I really enjoy. So you're running the standard mouse package of the Heartfire Hero, the Ember Heart, and the Manifold. But then you add Flowerfoot Swordmaster. So it's an Offspring 2, and then it has a Valiant trigger. Whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability you control for the first time each turn, mice you control get +1/+0. So if you have the Offspring and you target one and then the other, you're giving +2/+0 to all of the mice that might be on the board. So pretty cool little effect. It's a 1-drop if you need just something to play on curve. It's also a 3-drop if you want to play the Offspring. But then we're also running Mabel, Heir to the Cragflame. So other mice you get you control get +1/+1. When Mabel, Heir to the Cragflame enters, create a Cragflame, a legendary colorless equipment artifact token with equipped creature gets +1/+1, has vigilance, trample, and haste. So you can play this, put it down on the board, and then you can equip to targeting something like a Heartfire Hero that might be on have summoning sickness, and then now it's a 2/2 plus it's a 3/3 because you targeted it, and now it has haste and trample and vigilance. And so you're swinging in with that right away. And then over here in your instances, obviously Burst Lightning, Monstrous Rage, and now Lightning Helix, having access to extra little bit of life gain, and the 3 damage is huge. 3 damage is a really good line in Standard right now. That's going to hit your Glissas, that's going to hit your Endurings, that's going to hit, there's a lot of like random 2 toughness things as well that it can hit, but yeah, 3 is a good little line in Standard. And then some of my favorite aspects of this deck: Shard Mage's Rescue, protect your thing, give it a +1. It targets, so if you hit it on your Heartfire Hero, It's going to trigger that Valiant trigger. It's going to trigger the Valiant trigger on Ember Heart. It's going to trigger the Valiant trigger on Flowerfoot. So like triggering those Valiant triggers is huge. And then one of my other favorite ones, I love being able to get 2 of these down on the same creature, because now it's going to cost 4 to do anything to this creature. So like you have to have basically 6 mana to do anything to this creature, because it's 2 for a removal. So like a Go for the Throat or an Anoint or anything like that in black. If it's red, you might be able to ping it out, but then you still need like 5. But that's assuming the toughness is still really low. And then it's lifelink. So you put double strike on a mouse because of Manifold Mouse, and you swing in, you're just gaining a bunch of life. So it's one of my favorite things. The only thing that's really sucks about the Boros mice is the mana base. We don't have any Verges in Boros colors, so you got to run your Battlefield Forge, which pings you. You got to run Inspiring Vantage, which is good. That's a good one. But it can come in tapped on you. I do like the addition of 1 Raucous Carnival, because you get the opponent to 13 life pretty quickly. You can do that by like turn 2, turn 3 pretty reliably. So oftentimes this is coming in untapped. And then running Restless Bivouac. The Restless Bivouac actually does work in there. You can target another card with it. I've ran out of cards before and just keep swinging with Restless, and they couldn't do anything about it. And this thing's like a 5/5, 6/6, just swinging at them every turn. Really solid. Over here in the sideboard, running your Destroy Evils. This is another huge thing. You have the toughness 4 or greater, so Sheoldredge is out of here. Your 6/6 demons are out of here. You can even get that C Note. What is that card? We saw it over here. No, that's not the one I was thinking of. There's the little merfolk. Is it in here? It's not in here. There's the merfolk I was thinking of that creates a map token and has vigilance. But taking that out, taking out enchantments. Of course, Urabrask, got to run the Urabrask. More Torch the Towers. That's going to be helpful for getting rid of or exiling things like the Enduring Curiosity. Witchstalker Frenzy, of course, got to get to that 5 damage threshold. Running 1 exercise, so you really have 5 access to destroying enchantments. I like the 1 exercise because if they have any artifact synergies, being able to get rid of those. Of course, running another Shelter by Ghosts is huge, and then 2 more Screaming Nemesis. Specifically, I think I like to use it against any life gain deck, and I'll even ping my own Screaming Nemesis with like a Burst Lightning, do 2 damage to it, do 2 damage to them, so they'll stop gaining life. Big fan of this deck, and this is one that you're gonna see a ton of. So if you look at these A and B tier decks, you're going to see a ton of these in that platinum to mythic range. Still mono red aggro, you're going to see a ton of those. The grinders just want to spam matches. Again, we're looking at best of 3. We're not really looking at best of 1. For the sake of those at home, we will cap this video with a very, very quick review of best of 1. Just because I know somebody's going to ask, like, hey, why don't you do best of 1? Okay, let's do best of 1. All right, now we're looking at bronze to gold in best of 1. Still going to see, it's just a lot of aggro. Mardu aggro, Boros aggro, mono red tokens is what we're seeing most of. We'll go over here to the tier list. We're going to see the same thing. Mono red or aggro, Mardu aggro. So what is in the Mardu aggro? So it's running the sort of like an enchantment auras, but it's not really Mardu. You're really just you're not even playing the black. They're gonna call it Mardu because of Callous Sellsword. This is mostly a Boros auras deck that's running the Callous Sellsword. So Boros auras is gonna be the same. This just has more spells in it. So mono red aggro, Mardu, air quotes, because of Callous Sellsword. You're really just, again, using the burn together, destroy your own creature, do damage to something. But the whole Boros Auras deck is all about Optimistic Scavenger, triggering off things like Ethereal Armor, Shard Mage's Rescue, Feather of Flight, the Shelter by Ghosts, and then we even have the Demonic Ruckus. A lot simpler mana base. You're just running the Inspiring Vantage, the Battlefield Forges, and 6 mountains and 6 plains. And then that Callous Sellsword just there to do a little bit of extra damage, which is actually helping it with its win rate. So we're seeing 57.9 in this particular deck versus 55.5. So getting that extra little bit of damage is actually helpful. And then, like I said, the same base, but they're doing a Tali's Favor instead of the 2 Sellswords here. So over in B tier, tons of decks in the B tier. We got Rabbits, we got Mono Black Midrange, Mono White Life Gain, Mono White Control, Selesnya Aureas, Rakdos Aggro, Azorius Enchantments, 4-color Domain, Mono Black Skeletons, 5-color Reanimator, and Orzhov Bats, finishing out the best of 1 in the bronze to gold. Like I said, we're making this one quick because I still believe your best bet to go up the ranks is to play best of 3. So taking a look at best of 1, again, in the platinum to mythic range, Rakdos aggro, mono red aggro. So you got your aggro decks still at top. We'll take a look at the tier list. Nothing really changes other than Boros, Aura, or the Mardu, which is just Boros Auras, goes down, and standard Boros Auras goes up. Mono red aggro, still the number 1 position here. Like I said, that's all best of 1 is. It's based 28,000 matches in the last week, 20,000 matches in Boros Auras. I really struggled to say Boros Auras, and then 6,000 with the Mardu. So between those, we're looking at 54,000 matches of the 35 or 350,000 matches. We also see a lot of mono black mid-range at 28,000. That's another one it's heavily played. See what other ones are heavily played, like Dimir mid-range, 13,000. Again, I'm just looking at the last week. So most of this is all up here with people running the mice and either doing Aura's version. I want to say Oros because of Boros. Aura's version or just the standard aggro version. But we're actually seeing about 26,000 matches are in the Aura's version, and 28,000 are in the just the standard red aggro. So all that to be said, that's pretty much what best of 1 is. Running your mice and seeing what you can do with the aggro decks. So, my friends, you've made it this far in the video. You might as well do the thing. Leave a comment below. Like, subscribe. Come hang out with me as we do weekly videos, sometimes daily videos, and daily streams over on this channel where we're just covering my journey as I try to qualify for the Pro Tour in the next 5 years. So I'll be doing a lot of constructed content. I'll be doing draft content. We'll be doing tournament reviews or tournament overviews. And we will be doing news pieces, just everything Magic the Gathering related as it is part of my journey, because I do need to read these news articles. I do need to compete in these tournaments. I do need to know drafting. I do need to know constructed. So all of that is being done here on this channel. So come follow along in the journey, hang out with us, and until next time, we'll catch you at the table.